You ever sometimes think you live in the bubble? You live in this bubble where cannabis is just accepted. Cannabis or psychedelics or these other emerging therapeutics that we believe in, that you believe in, that you see helping yourself, you see helping your loved ones, you see it changing people's lives, and you get stuck in this bubble where you think this is how everyone thinks. But it's not necessarily still the case. And we know that because of the stigma that still exists in the industry and the stigma that patients continue to face on a daily basis. Stigma's huge, and we're going into it today. High Living with Chad. Let's go. Welcome. Today we're going into stigma. And before we do, we're going to start off with the regular. We want you to subscribe, like, share the content if you're enjoying this. Now, I know as well, there's so many different podcasts that are continuously starting. I only saw one the other day that I need to make room for, because I've got in my week, the way that I look at it, it's kind of like my shows. I know I've got around 2 to 3 shows that I watch on a weekly basis regularly. And this new one has appeared. It's a business one. I can drop it here if you want to have a look at it. Anyone that's interested in business, this is like better than an MBA that you're ever going to get. I would believe, like, let's call it a real world MBA. Yeah. And these two magical, and check it out. So I need to make room in my calendar to listen to more. So when we're asking you to do this, I get it. It can be a bit of a hassle, but if you are connecting with this content and it's speaking to you, well, let us, we've got some really good things. I'm talking to a few others in the community and we kind of see which direction we're each going down. And, obviously we're a big supporter. I'm a big believer, and at On Tracker, we're big believers in all boats rising, and we try to be as collaborative. We try to collaborate as much as possible. So when we see other podcasters out there spreading the message, all we see is that's a good thing. And we've got this lane that we're very interested in going down, and you will see more of that as we're able to get to that position where people can continuously take us more serious. And subscribing, liking, sharing this with one of your friends would be probably the best way. We see that a lot of you watch this and don't subscribe, so that is probably the biggest way that you can help us get started. And like what we're trying to do is provide you value, and stigma is something that if you are a patient or you are a loved one of a patient, or you're someone that sees someone going through the daily battles of working through their pain meds, of being stuck on anti-anxiety medication, maybe not breaking out of the cycle of depression, continuously being stuck with addictions, continuously making bad decisions, continuously in chaos. I imagine you're like, I want them to feel a bit better, and I want them to be better, right? And I imagine if you're a friend or your loved one and you want the best for them, then you would be open to what other solutions can come with it, right? But if we're just to have a look, and let's give or take some of these numbers, but let's focus on the Australian market to start off. And let's say there's around 300,000 patients in Australia, give or take. And let's say the population of Australia is around 26 million. That means we've still got less than 2% of the population that is utilizing cannabis as a medicine. Now, we're not going to get into the split between what's a recreational user and what is a medicinal user. That's not where we're at today. But we also do know that how do you define what a medical user is, right? And some of the individuals that are out there and consuming cannabis, they're likely utilizing it in that in a way where they see it and the benefits that they get are a medicine. But the challenge of acceptance, even from the own industry, is the stigma. And so if there's stigma within the industry, let's think about what about the stigma in the community when still less than 2% of the population see this, believe this, and are taking this as a medicine. So we're still in the infancy of cannabis emerging to others. So if you're still with us at the moment, I know I'm going on a little bit, but I'm trying to outline the significance of why we're still in the position that we are. Now, how is this evidence? Well, there's Shana, one of the Australian patients, and recently she got a lot of support from many of the Australian community around some of the stigma and the injustices that she was experiencing when she wasn't able to take her cannabis within hospital. And that is still the case in a lot of different places. Now, why is that? Could be a lack of evidence. There's no doubt about it, but it can also be as a result of the stigma. Where else does this get displayed, right? So think about social occasions, think about parties, and this is going to vary, I think, considerably based on what sort of individual you are and how you consume your medicine, right? So let's think about that social setting where you arrive and maybe you're carrying a few drinks for individuals, completely normal. Now let's think about you're the only one in a situation where then you're consuming cannabis. Where are you going to go? Some of you, I've got one person in my mind at the moment. If you're watching this, you probably know who I'm talking about. But you would just sit there, light up the big fella, and you would go for it. Some of us aren't there. And if we have a lens, a cultural lens, I'm currently in South America, I'm in Peru, and some of the social occasions I go to, I'll have little soft gels with me. So I'm an oil, edible, and soft gel guy. That's what I take. But still, if I have an oil, there's times where if I'm in a social setting, I just want to take out a few drops. Now, I know that may be looked upon not in the best way. So is it my responsibility as an advocate to just go, I don't care, and I'm going to consume it here in front of everyone because I'm demanding this? Or is it how are we going to view this, right? So generally I still take off at times, may go to the toilet, or if I have my soft gels, it's obviously much more convenient. That's probably going to depend on how you consume your medicine, where you are in your own journey, and then how you weigh your own beliefs against the societal expectations and how that kind of fits in. And now if you're just alone, or there's not much regard for what else is happening around you, obviously me being over in Peru, I've got my family over here and I've got expectations and norms, and you've got to balance and massage that while at the same time knowing your own beliefs. Now, I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just giving you a situation at the moment that I imagine wherever you are, you can envision someone walking in with some drinks compared to the vaping, compared to smoking a joint, compared to dropping some oils, right? Now, many ways that this can go. And as the markets continuously mature, and as we get some of those numbers up a little bit more, as we get more evidence, as we do more research, and as we have different products innovation, I think we'll be able to see this changing of the guard. And I don't necessarily mean it needs to be like, and some people like this, oh, it's like an alcohol versus cannabis battle. It's not, right? And I'm not going to go into that today. Obviously, there's so much social acceptance around alcohol, and where cannabis is at the moment, it's got a long way to go. The thing that got me kind of thinking about stigma is I got to go back to when I was a cancer patient. So I got to take you back a long time. I am taking you back probably 8 years now. I was on chemotherapy. At the time, I was a terminal cancer patient. So as you're probably aware, I had a life expectancy of under 2 years. I was on a very nasty chemotherapy that gave me horrendous side effects, and I wanted to understand how I could improve my chances of living better and managing my symptoms. And so I developed this app, which brought me to talking to you today. But I was suffering, right? I was enduring in some ways, because while I was suffering, I kind of saw it as my responsibility. And I know I used to think about this. I remember thinking all the time, I would rather me going through this now than any of my other family members. So it wasn't like I'm happy that I'm going through it. But if it was like, if one of us are going to fall, I'm happy it's me, because I can bear this. And I'm not trying to sound arrogant here at all. I'm just sharing what some of my internal messaging was back then. Extreme nausea, extreme fatigue. The taste would, like my taste and my smell and everything would change, and it would be, yeah, it was difficult. And I was sleeping a lot. I was extremely skinny. I still kind of am, right? Some people would want to mention my gut, but let's just say it's the Peruvian food, yeah. And yeah, the winters were very harsh. There was the nausea, the fatigue, but there wasn't really any other. I think I was in such survival mode that I didn't really get depressed, and I wasn't, it was probably a little bit of anxiety and stress, but that kind of changed more significantly as years went on. But when I was there, I never really got depressed back then. No doubt about it. Last few years, kind of been a little bit of a different journey for different reasons that we'll go into another day. But I remember this is early as well. So this is 2015, pre-Dan's Law in Australia. I started hearing about cannabis, and obviously there was a whole heap of stigma that I had to work through back then and continue to work through to this day. And this is why it's a fairly important topic for me. But one thing I remember, which will stay with me, was I was at a party. Everyone was drinking around me. It was all my closest friends. And I was trying some flower back then, to be honest. And I remember I pulled out a joint, and that was kind of my way of enjoying myself. And I remember talking about, oh, this is medical cannabis. And, it was outdoor, it was grown organically, and there were seeds that got somehow came into our possession, and we were able to grow it in controlled settings, completely outdoor grown, completely organic, and beautiful strains, which alleviated a lot of my nausea at the time. So definitely effective, right? And I remember I was like, oh, this is medical cannabis. And I can't remember exactly how I went about it, but I'll never forget that little first comment that I got when I kind of was open about it for the first time. And it was, got laughed at my face. It's happened many times, to be honest, not around cannabis, around several other things. But the cannabis in particular, it was like, come on, like, you just want to get high. And it was like, actually, I don't. And I kind of went into it a little bit more details, but it was just this guy laughing at me like, come on, come. And I think that's changed. There's no doubt about it. And we see the numbers that have changed. But if we go back to just think about your network then, or think about your family and friends. So if you're still listening to this and you may not have experienced what I did back then, because I think education has got a lot better. But I was only speaking to someone yesterday who you probably know. I'm not going to mention them. And she was saying that to this day, her family and like there's stigma that she still experiences the stigma from her closest circle of people. And I think that's still evident for me as well. And I think this is probably one way to go into it as well. So what I would like kind of look at here is the way to describe it was like the unintentional coated stigma that occurs. So it may be like, okay, that's okay in that regard, right? So, oh, cancer patient, dying cancer patient. Oh, little bit, okay, yeah, go. Or the best one, it's not really as evident today, but early on in the cannabis journey for me, particularly when I was talking to some of those early vultures, I mean VCs and investors, not all, of course, but some vultures. It was always, this is early cannabis as well. It was like, oh, only CBD, right? Only CBD. I was like, well, no, not at all. We're talking about THC. Oh, only CBD. And why is that? It's the stigma. And that stigma still is there today. The stigma is still evident within workplace laws. The stigma is still evident within driving. The stigma is still very present, and it is felt in ways. And as I'm talking about, I'm getting a bit fired up. I'm sorry, but it's the unintentionally coated stigma that occurs around your usage, how you consume, and what that is like in the eyes of others. And you may see that whether or not you identify that as disgust in what you're doing, but it's disapproval in some ways. And that is the stigma. And I've got a great example of this, right? So let's say that I've had times in the past, I do it regularly, where I have a long break of cannabis, or recently I went away for 2 weeks and I didn't really I don't have such consistent product where I am at the moment. So I had to kind of ration a little bit at times, my oils. So I didn't really dose the way I wanted to dose, particularly when I was away, where my dosing can probably change a little bit on the weekends when I'm not working and I'm enjoying my time. I would generally prefer to dose a little bit higher. And what I've felt in the past and what I experience is that there can be a perception that it's like, oh, and this is what happened. I remember this vividly growing up for others. It's like, oh, he or she has stopped taking cannabis, starting to get angry, starting to get agitated. And look at you, like, this is the problem. The problem is you use too much cannabis, and now you've stopped doing it. You can't get access to it, and look at you. And that was kind of accepted. That was accepted. Until one day I went, no, This is how I am. I'm angry, I'm agitated, and I'm stressed. And I do a lot. But the big thing which takes me down and gets me back to a state of harmony in myself, gets me back to a homeostasis, gets the family back, gets the community back to a place, is when the dosing is right, the product is right, and you hit that right spot. And it comes in and connects with you, levels you out, and some of the stress comes down, and you're in a better situation. So that is like Chad 2.0 compared to, hey, I'm stressed. I get a little bit of road rage where I did much more in the past. Didn't have as much peace, didn't have as much spirituality, couldn't focus for as much time. At the moment, I can work for like 12 to 14 hours a day, relatively easy. I am dosing throughout that, and I can go into my regimen at some time, but I'm not here today without cannabis as a performance enhancer for my cognitive benefits and my creativity and my capacity to just keep going. And so when I see that, I'm like, well, you're missing out, because this is helping me go. And we've got so much data at On Tracker around the cognitive benefits, and I would be keen to show that to you. The main point I'm trying to make here, and thank you for staying on, and I'm going a little bit, but I think it's a key issue. It's you've got to understand who you are and what cannabis does for you. And then it's ways that you can advocate for yourself to inform others, support them to then start seeing cannabis in a new way, because they may be able to come in and start seeing it. But as I said before, you'll still see that unintentionally coated bias, which still exists in the eyes of many. So how are you going to be an ambassador for the journey? How are you going to be an ambassador for the plant and an ambassador for the moment by being for the movement, by being able to articulate, to be able to display, and to be able to show how do you utilize this very beneficial plant with a lot of medicinal properties to keep you the way you are and to keep you better. Because for me, oh, he's run out of oil. Maybe you're having too much. No. This is going to make me better. This makes me better. This is going to make me a better man. It's going to make me a better husband. This is going to make me a better boss. It's going to make me a better mate, son, brother, community member, etc. And it is that because it taps into where I am and it rebalances me out. And my dosing system that we've created at On Tracker helps me to then get that data for myself to understand. Have you ever heard about a psychological sigh? The sigh that I just did then. Think about when you're dosing next time and there's a lot going on. Ideally, you should be using the timer to then understand how long that titration and what that looks like for you and what is that right dosing for different situations. And at times you just get that. How we can capture that and share that with the other individuals that look at us in a certain way is something that we would be interested to have a conversation about, and what we're doing at On Tracker. It's a long burn. We've been going for nearly 5 years now. We're in our 5th year coming up to, and we're collecting some of this information to then be able to improve patient education. And what we want to do is reduce some of that stigma, change the place of cannabis medicine within healthcare, and change the place of cannabis within the community. And to do that, we believe we can break through the stigma. And the only way we do that is by doing it together. We've got a lot that's coming out very soon. All golden tickets have been claimed. So amazing. Some of the stories that we've heard. So incredible. The other big thing to close on, and I'll just touch upon this briefly, but what is very interesting is that what we've been doing at On Tracker, some people are like, that can't be true. The golden tickets, it can't be true. What's the catch? Real world data studies, when you see the conditions and what we're offering. No, that can't be true. What's the catch? What's the catch? Do you know what that's saying? That is saying that I don't trust that, because there is so many people out there that offer something and then there's fine print, or someone's trying to gotcha and catch you in, pull you in, take that money from you to be able to get their service. Do you know the challenge for On Tracker is that we're not competing for that? Why we were able to offer golden tickets is because we got to the position where we can. And the first thing that we did, we gave it back to the community. We gave a portion of that back to the community, which we think was considerable. And we have seen as changing people's situations at the moment that you'll hear about next week. And the biggest thing that we cut through was, no, that can't be real. Right. And then one of the individuals was like, yeah, but it's On Tracker. And they're like, and I don't want to ego, there was a different way of saying it, but basically it was about On Tracker and the credibility that we're building in the community, the trust that we're developing with you, which is amazing. So all we have to say is thank you for supporting us. Let's do this together. And I believe that we can continue to change the positioning of this very important and controversial plant and the way that it is consumed from society. And to do that, we're going to tear apart that stigma. This is Higher Living. This is Chad signing off. Very sweaty at the moment and it's hot and sticky. I appreciate you staying with me. Much love. Bye.